Excellent. Ramez, how are you doing?
I am well, my friend. Good to see you again.
Excellent. Thank you. Pleasure to see you and pleasure being here. Um, Excited to have a nice session with you, fireside chat. The session is called What the Future Looks Like for Technology and the Role of Facebook in the MENA region. And obviously, it's a pleasure having Ramez Shehadi, who's the managing partner of Facebook. My name is Bahoshy, and I'm the founder of Magnitt. And yeah, I think there's lots of stuff that we're going to get into. Just to put a little context from a VC perspective, which is my world, $1 billion worth of investment that took place across the whole of the MENA region last year, a record year for capital being deployed, despite the fact that there was a slight drop in the number of transactions. And we're seeing more interest at every level for activity in the VC corporate government space. And technology seems to be on the tip of the whole of the government and region at large. So just jumping straight into it, I mean, Ramez, it's been a roller coaster 12 years. You have huge amounts of data in the same way as we have data, ours being much smaller than yours. And many things have changed and shifted in the last 12 months. I mean, what do you think has been the real impact, specifically in the MENA region, of the last 12 months in what you've seen from your perspective?
Oh man, I don't think we have enough time for that question. That I think we'll be talking about for many years ahead, and not just in the context of the region, but fundamentally globally. 2020, changed everything: the way we live, the way we work, the way we interact, the way we play. Heck, it's even starting to change the way that we think. We've struggled from a health perspective, from an economic perspective, and at the same time, there's been these paradigm shifts and around these new ways of existing, which have opened up new corridors, new opportunities at the same time. So in many ways, ironically, it's been the best of times and the worst of times. And I think, being the first global pandemic of the digital age, it's been a boom and a bane at the same time. And I think it's been reported by so many, Philip, that this whole notion of the mass digitization that's happened, because physical mobility has been impeded, so much of time is now spent online that, what would have taken 5 years, 10 years or more, really happened in these last 12 months, to your point.
I mean, I was just going to pick up on that. I think it's an interesting one. We were discussing yesterday how kind of the emerging market space is very different to the US and Europe, and we'll come on to that in a second. But
Yeah.
and yet, one of the massive impacts of COVID, like you pointed out, is that you just can't travel. So for all of these companies and founders that are looking to get scale, you've been impeded by this ability to actually get into new markets. Yet simultaneously, you've had this effect that you've been able to enter these markets digitally and be embraced by your counterparts in those geographies more than ever before. I mean, Facebook is an example of a global behemoth that's across the whole of the world, but that was started 10, 15 years ago in terms of the trajectory of being able to do that. How is it that startups should look now in terms of, I mean, the idea is to look crystal ball 10 years ahead. How do they embrace that ability to scale? Is it easier than ever before, or do they still need to have that offline touch point moving forwards?
Look, I think definitely there's going to be an offline touch point that needs to feature into the orbit around any kind of business. Whether you end up having to ship something to someone, or whether you're going to receive someone into your business, there is some form of physical touch point. That said, there are a few phenomena that have really highlighted and emerged in force over the last 12 months, and in particular in the Middle East. One is the rise of short-form mobile video. Your ability to message, to communicate, to reveal, to incentivize to describe, to inspire, to express has really taken on this medium. People are engaged, they absorb this information, and particularly in our part of the world, as you have reported and have seen, our consumption rates on video are 3 times the global average in this part of the world. We're attuned and akin to it, and embracing this form of communication, I think, is critical to any business in its journey. And in fact, when you think about the retail phenomenon itself, there is now a much more rooted philosophy around entertainment blended with merchandising that is infusing sort of the trendsetter, the creator mentality into all commercial transactions. Phenomenon number 2. There's 3. Did you want to ask something?
No, I was just going to say, in that spirit, I mean, has Facebook seen any quirks specifically in that space that they've used Facebook in a way that wasn't being used before, that now you've seen these kind of changes? I don't know if it comes in points 2 and 3. I was just interested in the point that you just said specifically.
For sure,
things that Facebook never anticipated, but all of a sudden became a new norm in the last 12 months.
Look, never anticipated or anticipated in with a varying emphasis. Suffice to say that video is top of mind. Okay, whether it is allowing for greater personal expression, so we've launched Reels now in the Middle East, as you know, but also the infusion of in-stream video-based advertising, right? So it is now blended into the advertising value proposition for advertisers and with consumers. They're consuming this type of form of engagement, and it's working tremendously well for the advertisers, for the consumer, and then ultimately for Facebook. And this type of medium is allowing us to kind of engage the consumer, or allowing the advertiser to engage the consumer in a fundamentally different way. You know, if the philosophy of the past has been around embracing e-commerce to take product to a consumer, or allow the consumer to engage around a specific need that they have in mind, we have now we have a strong belief that we've entered into the age of discovery commerce, where products are able to find consumers, that the consumer's behavior, their preferences, their idiosyncrasies allow products to seek them out in anticipation of their needs, their behaviors, their desires. And so the advent of discovery commerce, I think, is top of mind, and people are engaging with this in a fundamentally different way. 360-degree videos, AR filters. People are engaging product and experience very, very differently. And then, to your point around, a cross-border, your opening remark around cross-border and markets coming together, we believe that conversational commerce and cross-border commerce is here to stay. Every day globally, Philip, there is in excess of 175 million people that are messaging via WhatsApp to a business account. That's just WhatsApp, let alone Messenger. And what is incredible about this part of the world, given the adoption of these messaging platforms, largely Messenger in North Africa, largely WhatsApp and GCC in the Levant, is that the intention and the activity to engage around some sort of commercial engagement and to fulfill a commercial transaction, if you were to rate or rank the top 5 countries in the world in this space, one of them is squarely within MENA. And it's not just a small market, it is a massive market, massive opportunity. And we think it is incredibly exciting. The amount of growth in messaging over the course of the last year is north of 40%, and this part of the world is one of the leading nations in this space. So, if you're familiar with the notion of dark kitchens and ghost kitchens, imagine the same philosophy now bleeding into the retail space.
And just, I mean, again, we always ask the question, VCs love to ask the question, entrepreneurs are trying to work this out. Are these phenomena short term because of the environment that we're in? Or do you believe these are going to be long lasting trends that will remain into the next 10 years that we have just quickly adopted because of the environment that we're currently in?
Yeah, I think.
And just to add on that, do you sorry, just from an infrastructure point as well, do you think that the technological infrastructure that we have in the region is adequate for this, or is there also a need to further develop the basic infrastructure of technology?
For sure.
Sorry, two parts to that.
For sure there is. I mean, let's get the infrastructure question out of the way. We've got in some markets incredibly high bandwidth, very fast networks and capacity. And in others, it's still grappling with very basic coverage. And Facebook has been a principal actor in the Simba subsea cable implementation, Africa 2, which touches many parts of obviously North Africa and the Gulf. We think reach and connectivity is still a major priority, in addition to those markets that are active. And the other key challenge of the region from an infrastructure standpoint is that in order to facilitate cross-border to really be efficient, we've still got to fix the logistics side of the equation. Oftentimes it's cheaper and faster to ship a kilogram from New York to Dubai than it is maybe from Dubai to some other regional city or hub. And so the cost of transaction, the efficiency of transaction still needs to be removed, and there's no surprise about that. And key among all of this is VoIP. For goodness sake, we've got to get this VoIP issue behind us once and for all. And I think all the right intentions are there. But the phenomena of being able to play in a market where you don't have brick and mortar, I think this is opening up a whole new world for all kinds of businesses, whether it's food and beverage or retail or other type of service provisioning. It is here to stay. If the name of the game in the past was location, 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 infrastructure, real estate, it evolved to e-commerce, okay? And it's now in the context of e-commerce, how do I go to the next generation of this, which we believe is conversational commerce and discovery commerce, taking things to people, or product finding people as opposed to people finding product. It's here to stay. It's a paradigm shift.
I want to go back to the point that I was asking about the difference between emerging markets or what we coin as Magnitt, emerging venture markets, and how they're different. I mean, ultimately, US, Europe, there's a clear operating model. Infrastructure is very different to what you've just articulated. And yet, when you look at what we like to look at as Africa, Eastern Europe, Middle East, Turkey, Pakistan, Southeast Asia, there's a different market that is almost bigger than those of the US and Europe when you bring them all collectively together, and yet somehow MENA gets lumped into different kind of pockets based on the organization. Now, Facebook operates across the whole of the world. Do you think that the opportunity for any entrepreneurs on the call is really to think bigger than MENA into these other emerging markets, and that there'll be a breakdown of this information transparency and across these markets to see more activity happening where an African startup can scale to Southeast Asia via the Middle East?
Absolutely, yes, Philip. I mean, I think, inherent to your question is the answer. The whole point around these online platforms is that it is borderless, right? I think any geography that is impeded by resilience, okay, if you're facing economic decline, has access to markets that are resilient, and there is growth that you can seek out and approach through these online mediums, right? Any market that is constrained by capital controls or financial flows is unimpeded in accessing markets that don't have those constraints, right? As long as there is an increased consumer demand for unavailable product or service, and there is freedom in accessing those markets, I think this game becomes ubiquitous. It's open. The trick for an entrepreneur is either to find a geography that is in need and struggling, or finding a consumer that is in need and can't find what they're looking for. And we have an open, borderless environment. We invite them to come in. During the pandemic, we launched Facebook Shops. We basically told the world, particularly in MENA, okay, the undigitized world, that, hey, we'll give you a storefront, we'll help you set up a catalog, we'll link you to a payment gateway, we'll figure out some sort of warehousing and logistics solution. Come online. We'll even teach you how to scale. Because it's not just your brick and mortar and now your clicks and whatnot. There is a way to play. There is a way to thrive online. And so we're super motivated for companies to digitize, access new consumer segments in whatever geography of relevance they may be. Yeah, those that are particularly impeded by physical constraint need not be anymore.
And I guess core to that is talent. I mean, it's something that I think as a founder that's looking to scale, you realize that your team is only as good as the talent that you can find. Now, there's no shortage of talent, but we have spent a year predominantly working from home, and you can access talent pools that you historically probably didn't have access to. And so I guess there's two questions here. Well, one interestingly, has Facebook changed the approach to hiring talent in the last 12 months with a view of being remote? And how should founders kind of think about acquisition of talent in that space? And I guess the second part to that question is, in this challenging time, for a company like Facebook, who I'm sure has a very strong emphasis on culture and developing culture, do you have any tips on how you can, in the years to come, develop a strong culture for a brand remotely?
Man, your questions are compounded. Let me jump into the pool of your question and swim from one side.
Go from the talent towards how you keep them motivated.
If you want to pull me back in if I'm off piece,
sure.
By all means, Philip. Look, the opening remark is the world has changed, and it absolutely has changed in this regard. If the philosophy of the past was, I have a headquarters in an expensive premium location, and I want all of my staff to be in this location, and I will compensate them at the highest levels in order for them to kind of spend most of it on the cost of living. I think this paradigm is starting to shift. I think we've opened up and realized that, hey, wait a minute, talent exists in a lot of different places. I don't necessarily need them sitting at the same desk next to me. And so the availability and access to the greatest capabilities for your mission has somehow gotten simpler, easier. Still some big questions that need to be solved. Tax implications, tax liabilities, and certainly then, culture. If so much of your innovation was around people bumping into each other at the coffee station or over lunch in the cafeteria, how do you emulate that or simulate that virtually? I think the jury is still out. We're still trying to figure out our way through this. I can raise my hand and be the first to say, I'm zoomed out, man. I can't, there's if every day is hours upon hours of Zoom call after Zoom call, one, when do you actually get any work done? Because you're talking all the time. And two, in a meeting, you can be distracted. On a Zoom call, you got to look at the camera all day.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think culture and productivity, the jury's out. We gotta get this right. I think there's some great examples of what's working and some examples, obviously, that might not be. But the search for talent, I think, has gotten much more interesting because geography isn't and co-location isn't the number one priority. I think, too, the corollary to this is, what is productivity? We've always kind of approached perhaps the notion of labor, we not being Facebook, I think industry in general has approached the notion of capacity and deployment of capacity in a traditionalist view. There is an 8-hour workday. You start at 9, you finish at 5, you have a certain time for this, And so we've segmented our productivity and constrained it to a certain window. But is that the right answer? What if we started to variabilize? What if we started to kind of say, hey, compensation is a function of productivity and output, and location doesn't matter, and I'm going to look for the best talent. So I think productivity and the search for capacity, premium capacity, capable capacity, fit for purpose capacity is in flux. Facebook was one of the first to say, hey, we're rethinking productivity. We're rethinking access to talent. We're giving people the opportunity to work from home and indefinitely, or to change their model from being office-based to being home office-based. But there's still a lot of questions, I think, around how to land that sustainably for the future, for the company, for the employee, for teams. I think there's a lot of questions still to be answered and figured out.
And so when you look forward,
where are we swimming to now? Are we swimming now?
We're gonna just continue on the cultural piece of it. I mean, just to reiterate that question. I mean, ultimately, have there been? I want to try and make it a little practical. I mean, all of us will admire to learn from your experience and your hands-on experience. I mean, have you done anything that you saw worked really well for your own employees at Facebook that you can say that was a quick trick? I love Eli Habib, and congrats to him on his raise of the SPAC in the US on the NASDAQ. And when I speak to him, he says, I like going to conferences where somebody tells me something tangible that I otherwise didn't know. So to ask you for something tangible, was there any hack or trick or something that you managed to learn over the last 12 months that all of us entrepreneurs could potentially apply to help with engaging, be it other colleagues or potentially customers in an effective way?
Yeah. Well, I think for Facebook, the shifts in terms of being online and engaging online weren't perhaps as dramatic as they were for other companies. We are a large and distributed company. We're working with people all around the world. We leverage these video conferencing platforms all the time in our day-to-day activity. Obviously, this is crescendoed, increased dramatically. And what I think we've discovered are a number of tricks that have been useful for us. One is doing what you did in your physical world and copying it into the digital, onto this platform are not synonymous. You can't take a 30-minute in-person meeting and think that a 30-minute VC is somehow equal. And so we're trying to give people time back. If we're that much more focused and on point on these video conferences, let's reduce meeting time, give people time and space to think. Have a think about what really makes a difference. Do I need to be in a meeting? Is there a better alternative to it? Can we use a different platform of communication to get it done rather than everyone always having to jump onto a VC and discuss it as in its totality? Do I always have to have the camera on? Can I create space? Can I have a walking meeting rather than a sit down and have this type of dialogue type of meeting? I think these things have been extremely useful. The other one around just having space to relax and think and not have a specific agenda at specific times at the acute points of the crisis were immensely useful. We created book reading clubs online. We created cooking classes online. We had yoga classes online. We had coffee breaks online. And it allowed people to release the agenda and just be themselves. Yeah. And I think we all were searching for our identity. This, who am I in this way? And it allowed us to kind of take the construct off and be our authentic self. And this is one of the key values in Facebook is that it's really about authenticity and being true to oneself. And figuring out a way to do this on these mediums has been a critical success factor for us. And it's a journey. I wouldn't say that we're there yet. We've got a long way to go.
And with that in mind, if we just want to take a slightly forward-looking approach to things, I mean, what's Facebook or you personally betting on being the big game changers or trends moving forwards in the next 5 to 10 years for the MENA region that we should be looking out for? Do you have any strong views on where you mentioned kind of communication, you meant entertainment, but like, do you see any big emerging trends moving forwards?
Basics. We got to get the basics done over the next decade. We've got to get the whole infrastructure sorted out, the voice over IP stuff, bankruptcy laws, cross-border logistics. And I'm confident that will find its way. I think we absolutely must figure out how to optimize the flow of finances to small and medium enterprises, right? I'm fundamentally convinced that there is this hyper strong correlation between the demand for small and medium business loans to the job creation gap that we have in the region, right? If we can fix that, it'll go a long way for putting a major dent in what is a critical issue in the region, joblessness or job preservation. Digital will play a key role in this. If you look at the total number of micro, small, medium, and large enterprises, it will number in the tens of millions. The percentage that are plugged into a digital economy is abysmally low, which as an upside is super exciting because we can only go up, right? If we get businesses and individuals and solopreneurs to embrace this digital paradigm, they will no longer be impeded by a physical radius. They access new markets, they develop, they create scale, they preserve jobs, they create jobs. So this will be another key medium for growth. And I think the characteristics of our region, the inherent entrepreneurship in our people, the ability to kind of replicate and localize, if not innovate fresh with a number of ideas, will be the seeds of our expansion and our growth. Services will be made available to people. Information and education will be made available to people. And I think all of this will seed economic growth and wellness for the region. And these paradigms that we talked about, discovery commerce, conversational commerce, cross-border commerce, will be consequences of this evolution. I am immensely hopeful, Philip, about this region. I'm hopeful that guys like you, like me, like perhaps many of these listeners that we have today, won't have to do what we did.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about this the other day. We won't have to get on a plane and go travel somewhere else to establish the foundation of their career and their value proposition. I am hopeful that this part of the world will rise up and create the infrastructure and the environment for learning, for growth, for sharing, for community, and that the brand of the region will be significantly built on positive stories of innovation, of technology. Look at and the kind of stuff that's actually happening now out of the Emirates, going into Mars, for goodness sake. We need much more of this across the region. And so I'm hopeful my kids don't have to emigrate, or perhaps their kids don't have to emigrate, and that they can make it all happen here.
I think that's fascinating. And I guess given the audience of Techwadi and the audience of people that are here, if you had an ask or a wish from people outside of the region, what would it be for them to support you, us, all in that quest? I mean, obviously, we can always learn from outside, whether it's within Facebook or any multi-global organization, or whether it's the people in the audience here. What would be your ask or wish for them to help in supporting us achieve that goal?
Yeah, wow. Great question. I would say, if you can find it within you, choose to be optimistic about this region. It's very easy to be pessimistic. We've unfortunately deal with a lot of complexities. And particularly now, when you think about Syria and Lebanon and Palestine and so many of these other countries that continue to struggle, and Iraq that struggle with finding themselves, I would say choose to be optimistic, lean in, invest, innovate, and be a part of the solution. I guarantee you, if everyone here who can leaves, what's left? We've got great talent outside, great capability, great ideas, great intentions, great financing. Please prioritize the region. If it's not you that's going to do it, who's going to do it? Yeah. And as it's been said before, if we don't start doing this now, then when?
Yeah,
Then when?
absolutely.
So be positive, invest, come, and don't lose sight of where we all have come from.
And I guess just to flip it on its head, you're in a unique
I
position as
sound like
well
I'm on a
because
soapbox here, Philip. You've put me on a soapbox. What is it?
I'm loving it.
I'm in the speaker's corner. This is
It's
like
great,
Hyde
great
Park.
energy, and
It's a
we
digital
can all.
Hyde Park.
No, I guess, I mean, look, honestly, you're in this unique position that you can leverage. I always find it fascinating whenever I speak to similar people in your position, which is like, what are the learning lessons that we have from other emerging markets, right? So forget the US from that perspective. There's Southeast Asia, there's Africa, there's Latam. You're operating in all of those geographies. Are the challenges the same, and are the learning lessons of how we can fix some of these things the same? Or what are some of the key takeaways you've had when you speak to your peers in other emerging markets?
Look, I think there's a key phenomenon that I will highlight here, and let's be frank. There are some geographies where governments really lean in. That financially they lean in, they provide outstanding infrastructure. We have plenty of those in this part of the world. And then we have those geographies where, unfortunately, that kind of philosophy isn't there, to put it nicely. And those investments and those infrastructures are work against the community, للأسف. But I would say, to summarize that, sometimes you can lean on the public sector, sometimes you have to lean on the private sector to be a mover. But amidst all of this, what really has been a game changer have been, these breakaway companies, these breakaway ideas, these breakaway entrepreneurs who establish a bit of a tectonic shift. They create maybe an earthquake, a subsea earthquake. It creates a tsunami of innovation, of talent creation, of capability. And we see this over time. A company comes out and does something and it creates a wave. And then there are more entrepreneurs and they create a wave. And I think we have all of this in nearly every country that's out there. Morocco has its share. Iraq has its share. Lebanon has its share. Egypt is awesome these days. It's just humming. And so if we can harness, I would say, the positive intention that's coming out of these things, it's at the root of what drives my positivity. And this isn't just a regional phenomenon, it's a global phenomenon.
Interestingly, to that point, we talk about the PayPal mafia, we've talked about the Kareem mafia here, the souk, the founders and the managing teams going in and starting their own companies.
Yeah, a lot of them
have you seen that phenomenon?
In Techwadi.
Yeah, absolutely. And have you seen that phenomena of Facebook employees in the region going on and doing entrepreneurial and companies effectively in that space? Have you seen the same thing happening from corporate going into new ventures?
Absolutely, and very much so in other markets. In Facebook in MENA is still in its early days. I would say we have a small but mighty team covering a very large community, and we continue to grow. There are many people that have graduated and are coming out of Facebook and are now at the helm of some of the most important startups, whether in the real estate sector or in the retail sector or in the entertainment sector. These things are starting to happen. And I am personally quite hopeful that we will see unicorns emerge from them and others. But yeah, I think this is not unique to specific other geographies. It is absolutely part of the potential of the teams that we have here.
Perfect.
But I don't want anyone to go. I need them all. I need them all.
Yeah, I know it's a double-edged sword, right? I guess last question from me is, so as startup founders here who may want to use and better utilize Facebook, what are the ways that they can engage with Facebook to get better traction and support in expanding across different geographies? I mean, are there specific tools that we are unaware of or aware of that can support us?
There is. So we did a concerted effort towards the small and medium business community in general during COVID. Okay. We did a whole program with the World Bank and the OECD, surveyed 30,000 small businesses across 50 countries, with a significant number of them in the region, understood what hurts, what doesn't, what they're excited about, what keeps them up at night. The stats are illuminating. I strongly encourage people to check it out. It's called the Global State of Small Business, and check out the MENA portion of this story. And I'm excited to say that there is an uptick. There is optimism that is significantly on the rise. But we've done a number of things after having kind of diagnosed the state of affairs. We created something called Love Local. Love Local really played on two facets. One, how do we help entrepreneurs equip themselves and position themselves for the greatest amount of success? And there's a whole slew of stuff there. And how do we tell the consumers that are out there about these local businesses so that the level of engagement increases? In terms of taking a benefit directly to the SMBs, the small and medium businesses, we invested quite a bit of money across the region. We had a COVID fund. We had a Lebanon fund at the back of the explosion. We have created what we call the MENA SMB training hub, 40 online webinars, training courses, access to experts, English, Arabic, French. There's a business resource hub with all kinds of detailed upskilling courses for entrepreneurs, methods on how to scale, engage different communities, cross-border, Facebook shops, linking to payment gateways. I mean, there's a whole myriad of stuff for entrepreneurs that we continue to invest in. And we run, interestingly, these boost days, right, where we get Facebook experts beyond what's available in the hub to work with the small and medium businesses and the startups to show them how to leverage the tools in particular. We've done this in Egypt, in Morocco, in Jordan, in Lebanon. And we continue to double click on that and invest in that.
So plenty of stuff for us to get our hands on, and I think fascinating times ahead. Lots to look forward to, and like you said, I think it's absolutely right to put the Middle East in a positive light globally, and the best way of doing that is seeing more success stories speak for themselves coming out of the region, and for us to really help support them in getting to that stage and to promote their activity beyond. I think we're out of time at this point, but thank you, Ramez. Always, I know. Well, I know. I don't know how many more tangents I could.
Maybe you and I can continue.
We can continue. I'll happily grab a drink and continue the conversation. I always thoroughly enjoy it. But thank you very much. Thank you to Techwadi. I don't know if there's any final thoughts or anything you would like to share to close out.
Look, maybe just put another line under this. Under my earlier message, I choose to be positive about this region. I believe we can all be agents of positive change. This region needs us, and it possesses so much potential. Please, let's work together and move from potential to kinetic. All of your ideas, all of your businesses, all of your access, there is a home for it here. Yeah? And I'm excited to work with you and many others to help make that happen.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, Ramez. Thank you very much, Techwadi. Enjoy the rest of the sessions, and hope to